They didn't just take a piece of my property. They took the one thing I'd spent nearly 15 years working myself into the ground to own free and clear. And the craziest part wasn't that they did it. It was that they genuinely believed I'd smile, nod, and let it happen. My name is Ryan Mercer, and until all this happened, I thought I lived in one of the quietest neighborhoods outside Lexington, Kentucky. Nothing fancy, just a modest corner lot with a weathered ranch house, a detached garage that had seen better days, and a long gravel drive that curved around the side of my property before opening up into a storage area behind the fence. To most people, it probably looked ordinary, but to me, that driveway was the reason I bought the place. I owned a small excavation company, not one of those giant operations with dozens of employees and shiny office buildings. It was just me, a couple of guys during busy seasons, a pickup truck, a trailer, and enough equipment to keep food on the table. That driveway made everything work. I could park trailers there, store materials, load equipment before sunrise without blocking traffic. For years, nobody cared. Then the Whitmores moved in next door. Nathan and Claire Whitmore, the kind of couple that somehow looked expensive even when they were taking out the trash. Within a month of buying the old Patterson house, they had contractors everywhere. New stonework, designer landscaping, outdoor lighting, black steel accents. The entire property started looking like something from a luxury home magazine. The first time Nathan introduced himself, I remember thinking something felt off. Not rude, not openly hostile, just measuring. You know that feeling when somebody shakes your hand while quietly deciding whether you're good enough to be standing where you're standing? That was Nathan. He walked over while I was unloading a trailer one evening. "Ryan, right?" he asked. "That's me." He nodded toward my equipment. "You run a business out of here?" "Excavation." "Interesting." There was a pause. Then he smiled. "Well, hopefully we can all keep the neighborhood looking nice." I laughed politely. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Looking back now, that sentence told me everything. The comments started small after that. Almost harmless. Almost. Every few weeks, I'd hear something floating across the fence. "That trailer's been there a while. Do you always keep equipment outside?" I wonder if there are county regulations about commercial storage. The thing was, there weren't. No HOA. No special restrictions. One of the reasons I bought the property in the first place. But Nathan seemed personally offended by the fact that nobody had appointed him king of the neighborhood. The first real crack appeared during a summer barbecue they hosted. Half the neighborhood got invited. I wasn't one of them. Didn't bother me. Honestly, I preferred grilling burgers in peace anyway. That evening, I came home from a job site and found a white Mercedes angled across the entrance to my driveway. Not fully blocking it. Just enough. Like someone had decided my access mattered slightly less than their convenience. I walked over and knocked on the Whitmore's front door. Claire answered, holding a glass of wine. "Hey," I said, "one of your guests is blocking my driveway." Before she could answer, Nathan appeared behind her, already irritated. "It's only for a few hours." I looked at him. "You've got your driveway." He smiled. The same smile. The one that never reached his eyes. "Your driveway comes awfully close to our property line." I remember staring at him for a second. What does that have to do with anything? He shrugged. Just making conversation. But he wasn't. Not really. Because a week later, I found survey flags sticking out of the gravel beside my drive. Bright orange, placed in a perfectly straight line. And every single one of them sat on land I knew belonged to me. I pulled them out. Didn't throw them away. Didn't make a scene. Just set them gently on his lawn. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Nathan stood there, hands in his pockets, expression cold. "We've been reviewing property boundaries." I folded my arms. "Congratulations." His jaw tightened. "Our contractor believes part of that side access may actually belong to us." Then show me a survey. "It's being prepared, so you don't have one." For the first time since we'd met, the smile disappeared completely. "We'll see." Then he turned and walked away. I stood in my doorway watching him cross the yard. Something told me this wasn't finished. Actually, something told me it was just getting started. What I didn't know was that within a few weeks, I'd come home from work and discover they hadn't just questioned my property line. They had decided to move it. 3 weeks later, I found out exactly what Nathan meant. I left before sunrise on a Tuesday for a commercial grading job about 40 minutes away. It was one of those long days where everything seems to go wrong. Equipment delays, mud everywhere. A hydraulic line blew out around lunch. By the time I finally got home, I was exhausted and thinking about nothing except a hot shower and a cold beer. Then I turned at my driveway. At first, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. You know that strange moment when reality looks wrong and your mind starts searching for another explanation? Maybe I took a wrong turn. Maybe I'm looking at someone else's property. Maybe there's a construction project happening. But there wasn't, because where my gravel driveway had always been, there was now fresh black asphalt. Perfectly smooth, perfectly finished, connected directly to the Whitmore's driveway. And running along, it was a brand new decorative steel fence. A beautiful fence, an expensive fence, a fence that sat nearly 10 feet inside my property line. I actually sat there in my truck for a full minute with the engine running, just staring, trying to understand how somebody could be arrogant enough to do something like this. Then the anger hit. I marched straight to their front door. Claire answered, still holding a wine glass. I swear that woman always seemed to have one. Your husband paved over my property. Her expression never changed. He had it surveyed. Show me. It's been handled. Then show me. A small smile appeared. Not a friendly one. The kind of smile people wear when they think they've already won. Maybe you should check your paperwork. Then she closed the door, right in my face. That night, I dug every document from my home purchase out of storage. Closing records, county maps, boundary documents, the original certified survey. Around midnight, I grabbed a flashlight and a metal detector and walked the property line. The original survey pins were still there, buried exactly where they were supposed to be, exactly where they had been for years. Which meant one thing. Nathan knew. Maybe not at first. Maybe he convinced himself he was right. But somewhere along the way, he stopped caring whether he was right. What mattered was getting what he wanted. The next morning I called him. You have 48 hours. For what? Remove the fence. Remove the asphalt. He laughed. Actually laughed. We made permanent improvements to our property. It's not your property. Then call a lawyer. Click. Conversation over. I remember standing there holding my phone and realizing something important. Nathan wasn't trying to resolve a disagreement. He was testing whether I'd fight. So I hired an attorney. Her name was Margaret Doyle. Late 60s. Sharp as broken glass. The kind of woman who could destroy somebody with a single raised eyebrow. She reviewed everything. The survey, the photographs, the property records. Then she leaned back in her chair. They built on your land. That's what I thought. Oh, it absolutely is. So we sue. We do. How long? She sighed. Months. Months. That was the problem. Because every morning I had to wake up and look at that fence. Every evening, I had to see Nathan's luxury SUV parked on land that belonged to me. Then one afternoon, while I was planning material deliveries for a large landscaping contract, a thought popped into my head. A very simple thought. The land still legally belonged to me. The lawsuit didn't change that. The fence didn't change that. The asphalt didn't change that, which meant I could still use it. The first delivery arrived the following Tuesday morning. 15 cubic yards of mulch. The driver backed up, looked uncertain. You want to hear? I pointed directly at the stolen strip. Right there, the truck lifted, and a mountain of dark mulch came pouring down onto that beautiful new asphalt, perfectly centered, completely blocking access. It was magnificent. 20 minutes later, Nathan exploded out of his front door. Bathrobe, slippers, hair sticking up. What the hell is this? Mulch. You dumped it on my driveway. No. I pointed toward the survey markers I'd red flagged. I dumped it on my property. His face turned bright red. You can't do this. I just did. He stepped closer. Move it. I'll move it when I need it. This is harassment. No, not done. I smiled. This is storage. He called the police. 2 officers showed up. Both looked tired before the conversation even started. They checked my survey, walked the property, studied the documents. Then one officer looked at Nathan. Sir, according to these records, this appears to be his property. Nathan pointed angrily. He's blocking access. The officer shrugged. Then maybe you shouldn't have connected your driveway to it. I almost felt bad. Almost. The mulch stayed there for 4 days. Every morning, I watched Nathan stare at it through his kitchen window while drinking coffee. Every evening, I saw him pacing. The moment I finally removed the pile, I could practically see the relief on his face, which made what happened next even funnier. 4 days later, I scheduled 10 tons of gravel. On a Friday, right before they hosted another gathering, the dump truck arrived around 3 in the afternoon. The driver grinned when he recognized the address. Same spot. Same spot. The pile landed like a meteor, higher than the hood of a pickup truck. Guests started arriving around 6. Nobody could use the asphalt. Nobody. Nathan stormed across the yard before the dust even settled. His voice was shaking. "You're doing this on purpose." I stared at him. "You built on purpose." That one landed harder than the gravel. And from that point forward, the war stopped being about property. It became personal. Because Nathan couldn't stand the fact that he couldn't control me. And I couldn't stand the fact that he thought he could. What neither of us realized was that things were about to escalate far beyond piles of mulch and gravel. Because a few weeks later, a certified envelope arrived in my mailbox. And inside was something that made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Nathan Whitmore was suing me. I stood in my kitchen reading the lawsuit twice because the first time didn't feel real. Nathan Whitmore was accusing me of interfering with his property enjoyment, damaging improvements, creating nuisance conditions, and intentionally harassing him. The man who built on my land was suing me for using my own land. I drove straight to Margaret's office. She read the complaint, took off her glasses, and actually smiled. It was the first time I'd ever seen her smile. "This is good." Histoire de hair. How exactly is this good? Because now he's committed. What does that mean? It means he can't quietly walk this back anymore. She dropped the paperwork on her desk. We countersue. For trespassing. For encroachment. For restoration costs. For legal fees. And suddenly the entire fight shifted into a different gear. The weeks leading up to court felt strange. The anger started cooling down. Not because the situation improved. Because exhaustion eventually replaces anger. You get tired of looking over the fence. Tired of wondering what the next move will be. Tired of carrying somebody else's bad decisions around in your head. Meanwhile, Nathan doubled down. He filed complaints with zoning. Complaints with the county. Complaints about my equipment. Complaints about noise. Complaints about deliveries. Nothing stuck. But every complaint revealed the same thing. This was never really about 10 feet of land. It was about control. Nathan couldn't understand why somebody like me wouldn't simply move aside. Then came my final move. And honestly, even now I'm not entirely sure whether it was brilliant or childish. Maybe both. I rented a portable toilet for a large excavation project. Didn't actually need it at my house. But I had every legal right to temporarily store equipment and materials on my property. So when the delivery driver asked where I wanted it placed, I pointed directly at the disputed strip, right beside the fence. Door facing their backyard patio. The driver laughed. Seriously? Very seriously. For 2 weeks, that bright blue portable toilet stood there like a monument to stubbornness. Neighbors noticed. Delivery drivers noticed. The mailman definitely noticed. One afternoon, an older neighbor named Walter shuffled across the street while I was loading tools. Walter had lived there longer than anybody. The kind of guy who knew every family that had ever owned every house. He looked at the portable toilet, then at me, then at the Whitmore house. Finally, he nodded. Good. I laughed. Good. People around here have been letting that man push them around since he moved in. That surprised me, because until then I'd thought I was the only target. Apparently I wasn't. The court date finally arrived in early spring. The courtroom itself was disappointingly ordinary. No dramatic music. No television-style speeches. Just fluorescent lights, old wood paneling, and people waiting for their turn to argue about life. Nathan showed up wearing a tailored navy suit. Claire sat beside him. Both looked confident. Margaret looked bored, which, as I would soon learn, was a very good sign. Nathan's attorney spoke first. He painted a picture of a successful couple making reasonable improvements to their property before being targeted by a hostile neighbor. Listening to him felt like hearing somebody describe an entirely different universe. Then Margaret stood. No theatrics. No dramatic gestures. Just facts, survey documents, property records, photographs, county maps, timeline evidence. Then she asked one question, a simple question. The question, Your Honor, may we see the survey the defendants relied upon before construction? The room got quiet. Nathan shifted in his chair. His attorney handed over a single document. The judge studied it, then studied it again, then adjusted his glasses. The expression on his face changed. Slowly, dangerously. Is this an official survey? Nobody answered immediately. Finally, the attorney cleared his throat. No, Your Honor. The judge looked back down. What exactly is it? A long pause. It was prepared by a contractor. The silence that followed felt enormous. The judge stared at Nathan. You poured asphalt and erected a permanent structure based on this. Nathan tried to speak. We believe the judge cut him off. You believed without verifying ownership. Nobody said another word. At that moment, I knew it was over. Not because of anything dramatic. Because judges see arrogance every day. And they recognize it immediately. The ruling came 30 minutes later. Complete restoration. Fence removal. Asphalt removal. Property restoration. My legal fees. Court costs. Everything. Then the judge delivered one final sentence. A sentence I still remember word for word. Property boundaries exist for a reason. Self-help land grabs are not how civilized disputes are resolved. Civilized. Funny word. Because nothing about the previous 6 months had felt civilized. 30 days later, contractors arrived. The fence came down first. I watched from my garage while workers unbolted the panels Nathan had been so proud of. Then came the asphalt. Jackhammers. Concrete saws. Dust everywhere. The sound echoed through the neighborhood for 2 straight days. And I'll be honest, watching that pavement break apart felt surprisingly quiet. Not exciting. Not triumphant. Just right. Like balance returning. When everything was finished, my gravel driveway was back. Freshly graded. Freshly restored. Exactly where it had always belonged. Nathan avoided me for weeks. Claire stopped hosting parties. Life slowly settled. Then one evening, about a month later, I was standing outside watching the sunset when Nathan walked to his mailbox. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he finally looked over. You could have just talked to us. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. I nodded slowly. I did. He frowned. Before the asphalt. Neither of us said another word. He grabbed his mail and walked back inside. And that was the last real conversation we ever had. Today we're civil. Not friendly. Just civil. The neighborhood survived. The driveway survived. Life moved on. But every now and then, when I'm backing a trailer down that side drive, I think about how close I came to letting it go. How easy it would have been to convince myself 10 feet wasn't worth the stress. 10 feet isn't much. Until it is. Because sometimes these fights aren't really about land. They're about whether somebody gets to decide your place in a community. Whether somebody gets to slowly push you aside because they think they're entitled to more. Now here's the question I still wrestle with. Did I escalate things? Absolutely. Was the mulch petty? Probably. Was the gravel excessive? Maybe. Was the portable toilet ridiculous? Without question. But would any of this have stopped if I had quietly accepted it? Honestly, I don't think so. So now I want to hear from you. If your neighbor built on your property, ignored your objections, and dared you to call a lawyer, what would you have done? Would you have waited patiently for the courts? Would you have fought back the way I did? Or do you think I crossed a line somewhere along the way? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I'm genuinely curious where people stand on this. And if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought confidence was the same thing as ownership, tell us your story too. Sometimes the smallest lines on a property map end up revealing the biggest truths about people.